Hail Internet, it's Paul, it's Matt, the Dork Lords. We are here today talking about Loki, Season 2, Episode 5, Science/Fiction. We open where we ended Episode 4, but now Loki is alone in the TVA on the brink of destruction, and he is involuntarily time-slipping. Now that the temporal loom is destroyed. He has an encounter with himself, grabbing the TVA manual, which will come important later. And he begins, again, seemingly involuntarily slipping through time and space to get the band back together. Mm-hmm. We end with the band back together. Reality spaghettifies, so to speak. But Loki manages to time slip back to just before all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
He says he's going to rewrite the story, and he slips back to the TVA with the gang. We assume it's with the gang. I think we only see OB, but we assume with the gang shortly before the events at the end of Episode 4.
Yes.
So in some ways, we did a whole story to get back to where we were, but that's the way it works with time travel.
Right. That's right, and with 6 series episode series,
That's right. So Paul,
yes,
what'd you think of Episode 5?
I would give it an 8.
All right. So an improvement in your eyes over the last couple episodes.
Yeah, I definitely say that. Now, while I still have qualms about, they made it even certain now where they wound up exactly where they were basically at the end of the last episode. So you could say this episode was a complete waste. But it's like obvious that they were setting up a number of things that they explored here. So we finally got to see.
Changed,
but we finally got to see Mobius's, affection for jet skis.
I loved the fact that they put him on a jet ski, but not on the water. I thought that was pretty fun. It's like, oh yeah, no, I sell them, and I have one in my garage or whatever. But you never actually see him on the water in one, which is great. Anyway, I thought that was pretty awesome.
They set up all the other characters. It's interesting to me that I, knew immediately that Sylvie would obviously know who Loki was.
Yeah,
it's like she wasn't pulled from a previous life.
Right.
She was escaping. She was running away all the time. So she certainly would have been.
Yeah, you would have had to have gone back to when she was like a little kid.
Yeah.
Right? Little kid Loki.
But yeah, you saw those different aspects. It was I loved Eugene Cordero.
Clancy?
Yeah. I loved his little thing there. He definitely brought a different character in there. I think everybody else was just a different version of themselves, but he was like, he was somebody different. And so
he was Frank Morris. Which is a historical figure.
Oh, you know what? It's only now ringing a bell. Last night it was just do. It was just Frank.
He's one of the guys who escaped Alcatraz.
That is not Loki. Because that's what people were thinking from the first season.
Oh, sure, right. The Loki escaped Alcatraz or something.
Yeah.
What's kind of fun about that too, which I think might be intentional, I don't know. But one of the other 2 guys who escapes that we see there in the escape his name is Clarence, which of course Clancy is a pet name for Clarence. So it's interesting that Frank becomes a Clancy. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. It was good to see those character moments. Even though I think the conversation between Loki and Sylvie could have been better. At least she wasn't. She was more relaxed, and I liked the way she was coming at it more than the accusatory, sort of peeved, irritated way she was doing it in the previous episode.
Okay, I get that.
So even though I think they could have done a better job of expressing the sort of futility of what he was doing, or at least his motivations for what he was doing, I thought. I still like that scene there. I'm glad they expressed as well as they did for Sylvie exactly what the stakes are. Because it's sort of like, it's like, if she had just seen that in the first episode, she would have been, we probably should do something about this.
Exactly. Right. Her reality, the McDonald's 82 reality goes poof.
Yeah.
And it was always going to go poof. Yeah. And somehow she was like, no. But anyway, so it was actually a really cool shot there.
Oh, yeah.
Where she, in the very, yes. I think the shot you're referring to is the record store shot, which is amazing. It looks great. Visually, very
really looked well.
But even before that, so the first time we see her, she walks out, I think it's to her truck or whatever.
Yeah.
And she puts McDonald's or something on the thing, and then in the corner of the screen it just disappears. You see it evaporate. And she doesn't pay any attention to it. And then later on when they're in the bar, and then Loki goes for the drink that he'd ordered and it's not there, and he's like, so they were giving these little clues that this world is disappearing, and then it just full on goes up in the record store. And the record store shot is just a really very artistic thing. And I love the metaphor of the record. I think the record player and the record for the TVA, this is a reality. It's a story, essentially, a musical story. But you can move the needle wherever you want in time on this thing, but it's all on these grooves. Anyway, so I thought that was... I thought that was a pretty cool metaphor for the TVA as well. And it looked really, really cool. And that's what I watch TV for, baby. I'm good with that. For me, I gave the last episode an 8.5, and I thought this episode was a bit better. So in being consistent, I think I got to go with a 9 on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. See,
really
I'm feeling good about the way I've been grading now, because now I'm not so close.
I started too high. Push it back down.
Yeah. So you're saying it's the best thing you've ever seen in your life. Oh, Matt. Oh.
It's like, sometimes you'll watch, I don't know, some kind of an Olympic event or something, and there'll be the judge will give the very first competitor the max score, and then they feel like they have to give everybody the max because they're well, compared to that guy, I guess he was good. Okay, all right. You got to start low. In fact, there were moments when Loki was wandering around the halls of the TVA by himself.
Yes.
And then I suppose later, too, leaping into different environments. And I think the record store scene reminded me a lot of Legion.
Ah, interesting.
The Noah Hawley show, we covered it back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's that show was high concept. This is a compliment to this show to say that it reminds me of Legion. And in fact, Loki's kind of newly discovered powers are somewhat Legion-like, just to say.
Yeah.
But
they had a number of nice effects in there, but the simple thing that they did, which is have Loki come upon himself and then zip out, and then we saw it from his other point of view. I was like, that works well.
Yeah, and we get the feeling that these, and each of these time slips does have an intention to it.
Yeah.
Even the ones where he's unintentionally there's a purpose. Oh, my purpose is I need to see myself grabbing the TVA manual, so I'll go get the TVA manual. Slip. Yeah. Oh, now I've got that kind of thing. So even when he wasn't directing it, he was. Either he's unconsciously directing it, or someone is unconsciously or moving him around. But I feel like maybe he's unconsciously pushing the action forward, perhaps, until now he can control it.
Right. Now I'm still wary of the fact that you called it, Matt. That you called it that Loki would be the one who would find Mobius and say, "Hey, let's go."
Yeah.
So
in this version,
but I think
which I guess ends up being the version.
I think it is. Yeah. I think it is. I think that's what they're establishing, unfortunately, which is a sort of this is a paradox. This is one big old paradox, and and then everybody, once it's done, everybody's just gonna walk away. It's just
that's the idea is that they walk away. I just wonder if now, maybe in this reality, if he who remains or some version of him takes over, Loki's kind of reset the TVA. I can imagine a scenario where then like something like He Who Remains takes over and then wipes all these people's memories so they don't want to go back. And so like that's why Mobius has kids.
Yes, Mobius has kids.
And he's doesn't know them, doesn't remember them. So I'm just wondering if maybe the mind wipes were to keep the people there. Like,
I don't know. I guess we got one episode left. And I don't think it's crazy to assume that He Who Remains is going to be there. I mean, I guess he could be going back to the moment after He Who Remains blew up, but I feel like, did they have any options at that point? I feel like they should go back to a time when He Who Remains hadn't walked out yet and blown up.
I mean, I feel like what you would do we know from the trailers that there's a shot where we see Loki without any suit walking on that causeway.
Right.
So I think what we're going to come back to in episode 5 is Victor Timely either just walked out and died, or he hasn't walked out yet, and he's like, "Look, I'll do this." And then Loki, with his newfound powers, is somehow able to withstand the forces and go and accomplish the task.
Before he started time slipping or whatever, I mean, I was already thinking that he was a god.
Right.
I mean, I think that they'd already established that Loki and Thor and a number of them can withstand the vacuum of space.
Yep.
So I don't see why he would.
Right. You could easily write in a rationale for why he might survive.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't be crazy to think he could survive this thing. Yeah. But so if he does that and then saves the TVA, but I would think that ultimately you might want to have him jump to that moment when Sylvie killed He Who Remains. Like that's the thing that kind of set all this stuff off. If they jump to that moment and instead Loki saves He Who Remains or takes the place of him, basically.
That would surprise me, since that's the event that led to what's supposed to come in the MCU. So.
Yeah. Great. You're right. All the Kangs are now free because this stuff has happened. But.
Exactly.
Okay. Good point. Yeah. But there is this sense of in the comics there is a run called Loki is the god of stories. There's a version of that with Loki, Agent of Asgard, and this episode strongly suggests that the show's heading that way. I can rewrite the story. That's his quote.
Sure.
The show is called science fiction.
Yes.
Ouroboros is a sci-fi writer.
Yes.
He has these story beat notes, OB does, on his wall, and Loki's taking them in, and indirectly, a lot of those notes, you could associate them with the events in this show. I did notice one of those notes does say, like, basically mentions needing a sacrifice, and I'm like,
okay.
So, just to say, it does feel like they're kind of moving to this idea that now Loki can control the story, basically the narrative somehow. Which, an interesting parallel, somewhat unrelated, but Anansi is the god of stories in the West African culture. And so the show, based on Neil Gaiman's book, the Anansi Boys, I mean, it's kind of come out any day, anytime soon, and I'm looking forward to it. But it's interesting that theoretically you could have like this Loki god of stories as some kind of like almost like a version of Anansi in some ways. But anyway, just interesting. But I like this concept. If this is where they're going, I mean, you make him really OP. You make him like, is there anything he can't do? So they're gonna have to limit his powers in some way, I would think. Like, I can just whatever I think, I can just make it. You're like, okay, cool, but you wonder what limitation is going to get set on his abilities if that's the way they're going.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the area that he's trying to affect is kind of limited in that their own time stream.
Yeah.
One of the things that occurred to me is if I were writing it, I would not make this time slipping ability keep up. I would just be like, okay, that's what happened when he was in this situation. He could,
right, and now that it's no longer needed, he doesn't have that ability somehow.
Yeah. So that's what I would do. So I mean, it's already like pretty perilous anyway in terms of the story, where it's sort of like,
because now he's moving through time and space. At least they had the limit originally in the episode 1 or whatever, where he was time slipping only in time. which is still
Right.
a big deal, but at
Yeah.
least, but now he can go anywhere, anytime. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. He's his
You're
own
like,
TARDIS. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you make from this, in that final speech, when he says basically like, look, my purpose isn't a what or a why, it's a who. I have an idea about that, but what did you make out of that?
Yeah, that I think I might have crinkled my brow, and then decided not to think about it anymore.
Okay. I mean, it could be a lot of things. I mean, it could be He Who Remains as the Who. It could be OB. It could be Sylvie. It could be
Right.
Loki himself.
Right.
I kind of feel like more just because of the arc of this episode that it's his friends. It's the people. And the fact that, he has first he's asked, Obi's like, you got to find out why you're time slipping, and he's like, well, to save the TVA, and he tries to control it, and he can't.
Right.
Then he has this conversation with Sylvie, and Sylvie's like, what is it really? Come on, save the TVA, blah blah blah. Why? And he's like, well, because I don't want to be alone.
Right.
And she's like, okay, well, that's your real reason. Then we see all of these people very tragically, almost disturbingly, disappear,
yes.
and he's left alone. And in that moment, he's able to control the powers. And so I think the who is, hey, I need people in my life, people in particular.
Okay.
And so that's what makes me control it. So that's what I got out of it.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. I think that's kind of where this episode was.
Yeah, because when who could be any number of people. And in my head, it's like, which one person is he talking about?
Right.
But, and it feels like it's stronger if it's his friends around him and not He Who Remains.
Which then also, I'll just throw this in there, the idea, I don't think necessarily this is the way it's going or anything, but that Post-it note saying like a sacrifice is needed. Mm-hmm. What would be the ultimate sacrifice for Loki? Would be He Who Remains, right? To be like, I'm going to put myself in my own personal hell, be alone for eternity. Like, it's the last thing he wants. Anyway, just if they somehow went that direction, I don't know.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's what I think has given him the control of this, is this need for people in his life.
Sure.
Which is a cool little growth moment for Loki, too.
Yeah.
We also see that OB's workshop is basically a blueprint for his shop in the TVA. I mean, it's very similar.
Yeah. It's very similar. They probably redressed that room to be.
Right. Yeah. Good point. But I mean, in terms of in show, I don't know. Maybe it's just the OB. Like, that's, hey, in my mind, this is the shop that I wanted, and it becomes the shop. Also, I thought it was interesting. I don't think there's a lot to this, except to say I think it's intentional. Let's put it that way. Mobius, Don, he's a single dad. He lost his wife. We're not sure if she died or maybe divorced, but it sounded like she passed away. Is what I got out of it.
Interesting.
So she passed away.
I thought you said she left him.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's true. He's got these two mischievous sons. They're kind of just little hellions that run around and trying to control him.
Yes.
Don does sound a little like Odin. I'm just saying, I'm not saying he's an Odin variant or anything, but
right, okay.
I don't think it's an accident that his life seems suggestive a little bit of Loki's dad. There's almost like an authority figure with Loki.
Okay.
That maybe the show was just casting him in a little bit of that role of an Odin metaphor.
They said I had him wear an eye patch then.
I know. I'm kind of like I was trying to think like, wait, did Odin ride jet skis? You know how he would ride on his magical jet ski across the plane.
His water steed.
His water steed. We're probably going to be talking about the Marvels next week or maybe the week after when that comes out. But interestingly, there's a Variety article came out, basically like Crisis at Marvel. Mm-hmm. We're not going to talk too much about it here, but just to say like it's kind of hit a lot of the YouTube channels are talking about it and such.
Sure.
Kind of talks about the problems with the Blade movie, with the Marvels, a little bit with Jonathan Majors. But so it shows that like, there's a time of things are changing at the with Marvel right now, and it's interesting that this show, in a Victor Timely way, is very good, but also possibly shows like a huge new direction for the MCU. If Loki ends up being like this central figure that he could be, they might be like, we're all in on Tom Hiddleston. Interesting. Anyway, I'm just I wouldn't be averse to that idea if they're thinking in some way of making Loki in some way connected to the main storyline of the MCU going forward. I can see it.
Okay, that'd be interesting. I think it's more likely, or at least I can imagine it being more likely, that we wouldn't see Loki again with the other characters until Secret Wars.
Okay.
And so I feel like that's a ways out.
Yeah, it is a ways out.
And I think the intention of it is, at that point, is to, if not, I guess before then we're supposed to get Fantastic Four, and it's my understanding that they're in a different alternate timeline, and that Secret Wars would collapse it all. That and the X-Men and everything that we've seen so far. That's my impression.
Okay. I did hear, and it's the rumors are, just that, rumors.
Sure.
But I had heard that perhaps the TVA will be somehow connected to the plot of Deadpool, the Deadpool 3 movie.
Oh, interesting.
So anyway, just to say, it's an interesting time, and
Yes.
I think in this situation, I do hope that this show doesn't just stay in a bottle. That this does have some kind of ramifications for the MCU as a whole, instead of just like, oh, that TV show that if you didn't see it, then who cares? That's fine. You're so we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out.
We will see.
But yeah, so excited to see the finale. I think
Yes.
I think the show has gotten better as the season's gone along, in my opinion. And boy, if they can end on another 9, or dare I say 10, Paul, 9.5, I'll take it. That would be really, really cool.
If I had to bet, or at least based on my own feelings about it, I wouldn't be surprised if I gave the next
back
episode
down,
a 7.
is what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, Paul.
Because I feel like there's more to do in this final episode, and
There is.
so and it's going to be a bit of. I'd be surprised. I would be surprised if what they come up with really does feel like, wow, they really knocked it out of the park. Do
you think it ends on a cliffhanger?
No, I just think that it's going to fall short in some ways. That's all.
Okay.
I think that they've done a good job of building it up, but the problems that of where they what they have to do in that last episode, might be a little bit more than they can handle. So.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
We'll see.
We will see.
I'm cautiously pessimistic, and you're ravingly optimistic.
I'm ravingly optimistic. Cautiously pessimistic. I love it. All right, so we'll be back talking about all that and more. Thank you as always, Paul. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we'll talk to everybody next time. Bye.